to another episode of the untold stories about courage, grit and valor. This is your host, Harleen Kaur. Today is the story of a father-son duo who fought in the Kargil War and were decorated in the same war. Today we have veteran Lieutenant General Amar Aul, who has been awarded with the Uttam Yuddh Seva Medal for his purposeful planning and execution. He led the 56th Mountain Brigade in the grass sector. I would like to welcome you once again, sir. So what was the inner force behind joining the army?
I was in class 4 in St. George's College, Missouri, when my uncle was commissioned. For the first time I saw olive greens. And thereafter I got motivated by that, and subsequently I even read a book. Some of you may have read it, Bugles in the Tiger by John Masters. And that is what motivated me to join the army as a professional career, so that I can do something for the country.
It's really amazing, sir. So what were the initial situation which you faced at the beginning of Kargil War, and how did you overcome it?
You see, in the initial stages, my brigade was in counterinsurgency operations in the valley. And we got information that something is brewing up in the Kargil sector, and we were moved up into Dras. I had just 2 battalions with me, 18 Grenadiers and 1 Bihar. And what we were told while reaching there, that there's nothing very much, there's just some militants or mujahideens who have come and occupied some features, 20-30 of them. And once you take over, we will clear them before you take over. I said, fine. So that is the kind of information that we had. And I was given the responsibility of Dras sector, and I found that we had very little information as far as the enemy was concerned, or the mujahideens or whatever at that point of time was known. And secondly, as far as the battalion, which was permanently located there, was deployed all over in penny packets. They had no idea as to where exactly the enemy was at that point of time. And we had no animal transport, we had no porters, and there were some of the battalions which were located there had no winter clothing. They were still in summer clothing when the shelling, the Pakistani shelling started off in Dras. This was the situation at that point of time.
Then how did you build up for the war?
During those days, Amarnath Yatra was going on. So we sent some vehicles down to Baltal, from where we commandeered porters from there and brought them here to help us in the logistics of this battalion. This was because the villages had all vacated, there was no civilians there, and there was no animal transport there at all. So we did this, and by the 31st of May, after 3 to 4 counter-attacks, we were able to clear all the ridge lines, and we were just about 30 to 300 meters away from Tololing top, which still continued to be held by the enemy. Tololing, I must also say that we had to launch a frontal attack. And why we had to launch a frontal attack? Generally, in our training, in our teachings, we don't launch frontal attacks. But the enemy had put in his troops in such a manner that we could not launch either an attack from the western direction or the eastern direction or from his rear. But we staggered the timings of our attacks and tried to change their concept as to where exactly are we attacking from. So we removed his focus of attention from the front to the southwest and west and north. So that is how we were able to capture Tololing. This was the first time, the first success that we had in the Kargil sector, and this paved the way for various successes that we continued to achieve. And it was the first time that we came to know that we were not fighting against mujahideens, But we were actually fighting against regular troops of the Northern Light Infantry. Another incident I would relate to is Rocky Knob, which was a very small feature, which we had to, it was a hindrance to go up to 0.5140, and I gave this task to 13 Jackraff. Now 13 Jackraff was a new battalion at that point of time, and they had just come back from the valley, and they'd never come under fire. So I told Yogesh Joshi, I said, this feature has to be attacked, it has to be captured. So they launched the attack on the first night by one company, and they lost the way, they couldn't find the place. So they came back. The second day, they came under very heavy firing. So General Puri says, now what do we do on the third day? I said, sir, just leave it to me, we'll do something. So I thought and thought what to do. I said, okay, we'll launch a daylight attack. So I told Yogesh, I said, at 3 o'clock, we'll launch one company, and I'll give you covering support by direct firing of Bofors onto that attack, and fire you in up to 300 meters. And then you launch. And can you believe it? In a daylight assault, we captured that feature by 1700 hours in the evening. So that is how these are things. And I was sitting on the Bofors gun myself, seeing that, you know, if you ever go to Dras, you can see the entire area like a sand model. You can see all features on the sand model, and you can actually dictate terms to the enemy as to how to do it. Unfortunately, we had a problem because we were going from downhill to uphill. Downhill to uphill attacks are always difficult, very challenging. So, and thereafter, of course, we went on to Tiger Hill, and Tiger Hill was planned. Initially, I had told you that 8 Sikh, which had casualties initially, but now they had rejuvenated. So I said, okay, we will launch you from the southern side. And 18 grenadiers, which had been recycled, like I mentioned to you, had also reorganized themselves. So I said, we are going to go from the most difficult direction, that is from the northern side. It was a steep slope of about 80 degrees. I said, we'll go with ropes, go on top, occupy the top, and then come down. And you have heard about the Yogendra Yadav, Balwan Singh and Nimbolkar and all, who did a fantastic job there to take on this. In the meanwhile, we also instructed 8 Sikh to take on the western portion of Tiger Hill, that is India Gate and those areas, and which they were able to. And that's the first time that we first came to know that he had started using regular troops also, and some special service group troops had come in. In fact, Aslam Sher Khan, one of their officers, was killed. Pakistani officer was killed, and later on, of course, his body was handed over, and he was given the highest Pakistani award at some point of time, and later. So this is how we went about clearing the enemy from these operations. And thereafter, of course, the ceasefire took place on 26th of July. And it's unfortunate that the ceasefire took place because we were in a position to actually go forward and even go across the LC if required. But these were instructions from the government, and a ceasefire was initiated. So that's the time when we had to close these operations on the line of control itself.
So your son was also serving the nation at the time of Kargil War. So how does it feel about the father-son duo?
Well, you see, as a brigade commander, he did ring me up. He says, I'm going for this operation. I said, good luck. Do well. I'm sure you will achieve success. Now, I cannot equate my son to anybody else's son. They are the same to me. If it was somebody else, I would have said the same thing. So that is how you equate your children. Once he's in for a particular duty, that's his duty to do it. So it doesn't matter whether it's my son or your son. It's all the same as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
हो मेरा रोम रोम तेरा कर्जदार है, हमारी ये आजादी तेरी कर्जदार है। शुक्रिया 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 हो शुक्रिया।